Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Love is Never Enough: How Couples Can Overcome Misunderstandings, Resolve Conflicts, and Solve Relationship Problems Through Cognitive Therapy by Aaron T. Beck, M.D. Narrated by Bob Dio. Introduction. I have devoted much of my professional life to a study of thinking problems in anxiety and depression, and more recently in panic disorders. Over several decades, I have had the opportunity to treat a large number of people who had distressed marriages and a few who were living together though not married. In many cases, these troubled relationships led to depression and anxiety in one of the mates. In others, the depression and anxiety aggravated difficulties already present in the relationship. As I turned my attention to the problems of couples, I found that they showed the same kind of thinking aberrations, cognitive distortions, as did my depressed and anxious patients. Although the couples were not so depressed or anxious that they needed therapy specifically for these conditions, they were unhappy, tense, and angry. And as my patients did, they tended to fixate on what was wrong with their marriages and disregard or blind themselves to what was good. The Cognitive Revolution in Psychology. Fortunately, the last 2 decades have witnessed a rapid accumulation of knowledge about problems of the mind that has direct applications to the difficulties that intimate partners experience. This new understanding of psychological difficulties has also been applied to a wide range of disorders, including depression, anxiety, panic disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and even eating disorders such as anorexia and bulimia. This approach, called cognitive therapy, is embedded within a major new movement in psychology and psychotherapy called the Cognitive Revolution. The word cognitive, derived from the Latin word for thinking, refers to the ways in which people make judgments and decisions, and the ways in which they interpret or misinterpret one another's actions. This revolution has provided a new focus on how people use their minds to solve problems or to create or aggravate them. How we think determines to a large extent whether we will succeed and enjoy life or even survive. If our thinking is straightforward and clear, we are better equipped to reach these goals. If it is bogged down by distorted symbolic meanings, illogical reasoning, and erroneous interpretations, we become in effect deaf and blind, stumbling along without a clear sense of where we are going or what we are doing. We are destined to hurt ourselves and others. As we misjudge and miscommunicate, we inflict pain on both ourselves and our mates, and in turn bear the brunt of painful retaliations. This kind of twisted thinking can be untangled by applying a higher order of reasoning. We use such high-level thinking much of the time, when we catch ourselves in a mistake and correct it. Unfortunately, in close relationships, where clear thinking and corrections of our errors are especially important, we seem to be particularly defective in recognizing and rectifying our misjudgments of our mates. In addition, although partners may believe that they are talking the same language, what they say and what their mates hear are often quite different. Thus, problems in communication lead to and then aggravate the frustrations and disappointments that many couples experience. Take the following case. Ken and Marjorie, both busy in their careers, he sold insurance and she was a secretary in a public relations firm, had decided to spend more time together. One Saturday, Marjorie told Ken of her plan to spend the afternoon shopping. Ken, wanting to be close to Marjorie, immediately decided to accompany her. Marjorie, after a particularly frustrating day reviewing the books of a large and complex company, interpreted this as an intrusion, thinking, "He never lets me do my own thing." She nevertheless said nothing to Ken, and was quiet during the entire shopping expedition. Ken interpreted her silence to mean that she didn't care for his company, and he became angry at her. Marjorie reacted to his anger by withdrawing even more. The facts of the situation were that 1. Marjorie did want to spend more time with Ken, but wanted to shop alone. 2. She failed to communicate this to Ken. 3. She misinterpreted his overture as an encroachment on her freedom. And 4. Ken misinterpreted her withdrawal as a sign that she did not enjoy his company. Numerous repeated misunderstandings, such as those between Marjorie and Ken, and the resultant mutual anger, will erode the foundation of a relationship. I have observed several times that similar misunderstandings escalate to the point of no return. What is remarkable, however, is that if partners catch the misunderstanding and correct it before it goes too far, they can head off the storm. Cognitive therapy is designed to help couples do just that, to clear their thinking and communication, so as to prevent the misunderstandings from arising in the first place. Dissolution of marital ties. Most couples are aware that there is a continuing crisis in marriage, that between 40 and 55% of marriages are likely to end in divorce. As they see more and more unhappy marriages and more breakups, couples may wonder whether this might happen to them too. Newlyweds riding the tide of love and romance want nothing more than a successful marriage. They often believe, at least initially, that their relationship is different, and that their deep love and optimism will sustain it. Sooner or later, however, all too many couples find themselves unprepared for the problems and conflicts that gradually accumulate in any marriage. They become aware of a growing unrest, frustration, and hurt, often without knowing exactly where the problem lies. As the relationship founders in a backwash of disillusionment, poor communication, and misunderstanding, the couple may begin to think that their marriage was a mistake. Nowhere is the cry for help of therapist tears more poignant than among those clients who see their once happy marriage begin to dissolve. Even couples married 30 to 40 years may feel driven to end a relationship that they now regard as an unending series of mistakes and miseries. It is surprising in a way that so many marriages do collapse. Consider all the forces that you would expect to keep a couple together. Loving and being loved are certainly among the richest experiences that people have. Add to this the other byproducts of the relationship: intimacy, companionship, acceptance, support, to name only a few. You have somebody to console you when you are bereaved, to bolster your spirits when you're discouraged, and to share your excitement when good things happen. And you have the extra bonus of sexual gratification, which nature provides as a special inducement to mate. Nor can you underestimate the satisfaction of having children and building a family together. The hopes and encouragement of parents and other relatives, as well as the expectations of your community that you will stay together, provide pressures from the outside. With all these binding forces operating to fortify the relationship, what can go wrong? Why isn't love, let alone all other incentives, strong enough to keep couples together? Unfortunately, centrifugal forces are at work that can split a relationship, demoralizing disillusionments, labyrinthine misunderstandings, and tortured miscommunications. Love in itself is seldom sturdy enough to resist these divisive forces and their byproducts, resentment and rage. Other ingredients of a good relationship are necessary in order for love to solidify rather than start to dissolve. The media's idealized portrayals of marriage do not prepare couples to cope with disappointments, frustrations, and friction. As the misunderstandings and conflicts combine to ignite anger and resentment, the person who previously had been lover, ally, and companion is now seen as an antagonist. What is needed to sustain a relationship? Although love is a powerful impetus for husbands and wives to help and support each other, to make each other happy, and to create a family, it does not in itself create the substance of the relationship, the personal qualities and skills that are crucial to sustain it and make it grow. Special personal qualities are crucial for a happy relationship: commitment, sensitivity, generosity, consideration, loyalty, responsibility, trustworthiness. Mates need to cooperate, compromise, and follow through with joint decisions. They have to be resilient, accepting, and forgiving. They need to be tolerant of each other's flaws, mistakes, and peculiarities. As these virtues are cultivated over a period of time, the marriage develops and matures. Couples are often adept at dealing with people outside the relationship, but few people enter an intimate relationship with the basic understandings or the technical skills that make a relationship blossom. They frequently lack the know-how to make joint decisions, to decipher their partner's communications. When a faucet in the house starts to drip, they have the tools to stop the leak. But when love starts to drain away, they have no idea about how to staunch the flow. Marriage, or even living together, differs from other relationships in life. When a couple, whether of the same or opposite sex, live together, committed to a lasting relationship, they develop certain expectations of each other. The intensity of the relationship fuels certain long dormant yearnings for unconditional love, loyalty, and support, and the partners either expressly, as in the marriage vows, or indirectly, through their actions, pledge themselves to meet these deeply rooted needs. Whatever the partner does is endowed with meanings derived from these desires and expectations. Because of the strength of the feelings and expectations, the deep dependency, and the crucial, often arbitrary, symbolic meanings that they attach to each other's actions, partners are prone to misinterpret each other's actions. When conflicts occur, often as a result of miscommunication, partners are likely to blame each other rather than to think of the conflict as a problem that can be solved. As difficulties arise and hostilities and misunderstandings proliferate, partners lose sight of the positive things their mate provides and represents: somebody to support them, to enhance their experiences, to share in building a family. Ultimately, they may doubt the relationship itself, and so foreclose on the opportunity to unravel the knots that twist their understandings. Untangling the knots. Working with my students, psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers at the Center for Cognitive Therapy at the University of Pennsylvania, I found that we could help these distressed couples by correcting their misinterpretations, untying the knots that twisted their communication, and tuning up their abilities to see and hear their partner's signals accurately. Further, we found that they profited greatly from being educated about the dynamics of marriage, how to understand their partner's sensitivities and needs, how to make joint plans and decisions, how to enjoy each other more. The same program can enhance marriages that are not in trouble. It has proved effective with couples living together as well as those planning to marry. In fact, some of the most dramatic successes have occurred in partners who are completely committed to each other but wanted to get still more out of their relationship. As the cognitive approaches have caught up over the past decade, an increasingly large number of professionals throughout the world have begun using them. On the basis of their careful record-keeping and research at our center and at centers elsewhere, it is apparent that this approach has helped large numbers of distressed couples. Among the graduates of our training program, Drs. Norman Epstein, Jim Pretzer, and Barbara Fleming have been the most active in conducting and publishing research on the cognitive aspects of marital difficulties and in applying their insights to treatment. Drs. Janice Abrams, David Burns, Frank DiTilio, Sto Hausner, Susan Joseph, Chris Podesky, and Craig Weiss are other cognitive therapists who have pioneered clinical treatment approaches in marital therapy. In view of the success of cognitive therapy, as used by psychotherapists and marriage counselors, the time is ripe to share our insights with the public. This book should be useful to mates of every kind: housemates, roommates, bedmates, and of the same as well as the opposite sex. People who have kinks in their relationships can use the book to understand them better, and to work out solutions on their own. Those couples whose problems require the assistance of a professional should find the book helpful as a preparation for such counseling, and it is hoped, as an incentive to get further help. The material in the book has also proven useful to couples already receiving counseling. The purpose of this book is not to describe a marriage pathology, but to define the nature of ordinary marital difficulties in a precise way, so as to clarify their primary causes. Once the various components of the problems have been exposed, we can begin to talk about how they can be solved. I emphasize the problems early in this book because that is the way difficulties are presented. Later, as you gain insight into the problems, you can start to solve them. The plan of the book. By first pinpointing problems and then solving them, I have arranged the chapters similarly to the way in which I conduct a series of clinical sessions. The first 9 chapters deal with different problem areas. Almost every partner in a troubled marriage will recognize difficulties in these chapters that resemble those in his or her own relationship. Sometimes the problem is obvious. There is more beneath the surface than meets the eye with respect to what people think and feel and how they act toward each other. In my work with patients, however, I sometimes have to peel back several layers to get to the heart of the problem, and at times one problem sends out roots to other areas, some hidden from view. The cognitive approach gets to the roots of marital difficulties by focusing on hidden as well as obvious here and now problems, rather than by reviving early childhood traumas. To help listeners determine the nature of their marital problems, I have included questionnaires at the ends of or in the text of several chapters. Listeners can use these inventories to pinpoint their specific problems with their partner, such as unrealistic expectations, inadequate communication, and biased interpretations. When we move on to the remedies, they can review their answers to these questionnaires to help identify their problems, a necessary step toward solving them. In my clinical practice, I first try to understand a couple's difficulty by analyzing their descriptions and their responses to these questionnaires. I then can prepare for each couple a cognitive profile that highlights their particular trouble area. As does the physician who attempts to diagnose a medical ailment through physical examination, laboratory tests, and x-rays, I use all the information at hand to make a marital diagnosis. Listeners of this book can follow the same sequence. First, understanding and identifying the specific nature of their marital problems, and then selecting appropriate strategies for dealing with them. After getting a clear picture of a troubled couple's specific self-defeating attitudes and distortions in thinking and communication, I explain the nature of their problems to them. I have done the same in this book, devoting the first 9 chapters to each of the problems most common in marriage. 1. The power of negative thinking. How negative perceptions can overwhelm positive aspects of a marriage. 2. The swing from idealization to disillusionment. Why the image of the partner shifts from all good to all bad. 3. The clash of differing perspectives. How partners can see the same event and each other in completely different ways. 4. The imposition of rigid expectations and rules. How setting up fixed standards leads to frustration and anger. 5. The static in communication. How partners fail to hear what is said and often hear things that are not said. 6. The conflicts over making important decisions and the breakdown of the partnership. How personal bias and incompetence disrupt its operations. 7. The role of automatic thoughts that precede anger and self-defeating behavior. How negative thinking leads to provocation and rage. 8. Thinking disorders and biases that are at the core of the problem. How cognitive distortions operate. And 9. The hostility that drives couples apart. In chapters 10 to 18, I present a variety of cognitive therapy approaches that partners can tailor to fit their own specific needs and to achieve the goals of their relationship. The help chapters start with the question of how couples can overcome the resistances and discouragement that keep them from improving their relationships. It is crucial that people recognize that they do have choices, that they are not simply victims of a bad relationship, no matter how hopeless it may seem. They can and should take responsibility for their relationships. These chapters show how. I then take up the basic values of marriage, such as commitment, loyalty, and trust, and describe methods to neutralize the forces that undermine these foundations. It is essential to rebuild or reinforce those building blocks that make the relationship solid. Chapter 11. I go on to show how you can increase the sweet, loving parts of your relationship and reduce the sour, irritating parts. What are the things you can do to demonstrate to your partner that you care? I include a questionnaire for you to use as a guide in evaluating how well you and your spouse are doing in demonstrating consideration, empathy, and understanding. Chapter 12. In Chapter 13, I present concrete examples of how you can correct your distortions and adjust your thinking to reality. Then I shift the focus to the way in which partners talk to each other and show how talking can be a source of pleasure rather than pain. Chapter 14. Chapter 15 shows how you can clarify your differences in preparation for your joint troubleshooting sessions, which are explained in Chapter 16. After you have eliminated the bugs in conversation and have tackled the practical problems of living together, you are ready to confront those characteristics and habits of your mate that infuriate you. Chapter 17. Finally, in Chapter 18, you will be able to apply the insights from the previous chapters to solving special problems such as stress, sexual inhibition, infidelity, and the conflicts that arise when both partners work. My assumption is that at least initially, this book is being heard by only one member of a couple. Consequently, my focus is on what he or she individually can do to be helped and so, in turn, help the marriage. Often changes in one partner can produce remarkable changes in the other. As you become more knowledgeable about the sources of and solutions for marital problems, your changes can favorably affect your mate's behavior. In this book, I discuss how partners can correct their self-defeating patterns of thinking and counterproductive habits, improve communication, and help to clarify and modify their mate's problems. Finally, I discuss how they can work together to eliminate miscommunication, to make their relationship enjoyable and fulfilling. In evaluating your relationship, you will find it useful to keep in mind your goals in marriage and how you can best achieve them. As a guide, I have listed what I regard as the aims for an ideal marriage. First, strive for a solid foundation of trust, loyalty, respect, and security. Your spouse is your closest relative and is entitled to depend on you as a committed ally, supporter, and champion. Second, cultivate the tender, loving part of your relationship. Sensitivity, consideration, understanding, and demonstrations of affection and caring. Regard each other as confidant, companion, and friend. Third, strengthen the partnership. Develop a sense of cooperation, consideration, and compromise. Sharpen your communication skills so that you can more easily make decisions about practical issues, such as division of work, preparing and implementing a family budget, and planning leisure time activities. Also essential to the partnership is setting policy regarding the care, education, and socialization of children. Foster a spirit of collaboration. Marriage is at once a business, a child care and educational institution, and a social unit. It is important that the approach to these institutional functions of marriage be carried out with reciprocity, fairness, and reasonableness. As with most books directed toward helping people with their problems, this one has a guiding philosophy. Couples can overcome their difficulties if they recognize first that much of their disappointment, frustration, and anger stems not from a basic incompatibility, but from unfortunate misunderstandings that result from faulty communications and biased interpretations of each other's behavior. Misunderstanding is often an active process that results when one spouse develops a distorted picture of the other. This distortion, in turn, leads to the spouses misinterpreting what the other says or does and attributing undesirable motives to him or her. Partners simply are not in the habit of checking out their interpretations or focusing on the clarity of their communications. Each partner should take full responsibility for improving their relationship. You need to realize that you do have choices. You can and should choose to use whatever knowledge and insight you can gather to make yourself and your partner happier. Partners can help themselves and each other and the relationship if they adopt a no-fault, no-blame attitude. This approach will allow them to focus on the real problems and solve them more readily. Actions by your partner that you attribute to some malevolent trait, such as selfishness, hatefulness, or the need to control you, are often most accurately explained in terms of benign, although misguided, motives, like self-protectiveness or attempts to prevent abandonment. Although this book is designed to educate and provide guidelines, it cannot have the same impact on a seriously disturbed marriage as would a counselor using the same principles and methods. However, I am convinced that many couples who would not ordinarily need or seek counseling can be helped by this book. After reading it, some couples may be motivated to obtain professional help themselves, or to use it in conjunction with counseling. Many people who listen to this book may not view their marriage as troubled, but still suspect that somehow it could be more rewarding. Perhaps a couple want to regain their former pleasure at being tuned into each other's thoughts, of being able to make suggestions spontaneously, of arriving at decisions without wrangling. This book offers hints to cut through the underbrush that impede solving your joint problems, to untwist the knots that frustrate mutual understanding. With an increased understanding of what makes you and your partner tick, you will be able to enrich your relationship. 1. The power of negative thinking. Karen, an interior designer, described how she came home one day flushed with excitement and eager to discuss some good news with her husband Ted. She had just been awarded a lucrative contract to decorate the offices of a prominent law firm. But when she started to tell Ted about this unexpected success in her career, he seemed distant and uninvolved. She thought, "He doesn't really care about me. He's only interested in himself." Her excitement evaporated. Instead of celebrating with him, Karen went into another room and poured herself a glass of champagne. Meanwhile, Ted, who was feeling somewhat dejected that day because of a setback in his career, had the thought, "She doesn't really care about me. She's only interested in her own career." This incident highlights a common pattern we have observed in people with marital problems. When spouses' high expectations are thwarted, they are prone to jump to negative conclusions about the partner's state of mind and the state of the marriage. Relying on what amounts to mind reading, the disillusioned spouse jumps to damning conclusions about the cause of the trouble. She's acting this way because she's bitchy, or he's being this way because he's filled with hate. As a result of such explanations, the injured spouse may attack or withdraw from the partner, and the partner, who very likely feels unjustly punished, usually retaliates by counterattacking or withdrawing. And so begins a vicious cycle of attack and retaliation that can easily whirl into other areas of the relationship. Interpreting a partner's motives in this way is fraught with danger, simply because we cannot read other people's minds. For instance, what Karen did not know was that Ted had been feeling depressed over a reversal in his accounting business and was anxious to discuss it with her. Karen had no way of finding this out because she left the room in a fury. She assumed that he was just too preoccupied with himself to notice her. But her angry withdrawal in itself had many meanings for Ted. She's running out on me for no good reason. And, once again, this proves she doesn't care about how I feel. These explanations added to Ted's sense of isolation and hurt. Ted, on the other hand...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?